Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Max Cohen and Tony Gold. This is our post-match show of Fulham's 2-0 loss to Crystal Palace. I'm calling this, why did Fulham lose to Crystal Palace? Because I think there's a lot of interesting topics we're going to get through in this show. Want to give a lot of credit to Crystal Palace because they had a game plan, they executed, and they were by far the better side. They deserve credit. But there's more to it than just how well Crystal Palace played. It's how did Fulham play, which was very poor, and why did they play so poor? So we're going to get to that in this episode. I just want to mention real quick that we are actually live in many places, but could you please subscribe if you haven't already on YouTube and like this episode? I would really appreciate it. We're trying to get the numbers up on YouTube each and every week. A couple people add. We're about 762. I'd like to get it to 1,000 because that will help other Fulham supporters find us. When I go on YouTube, this show doesn't come up. And I think part of it is because we do not have a lot of numbers on YouTube. So if you're watching Fulham content on YouTube, please do give us a subscription. It doesn't cost you anything. Just subscribe to it. Thank you very much. All right, guys, welcome to the show. First, Mr. Cohen, how you doing?
Doing all right, Ross. It's great to be on with you and Tony. I think yesterday was one of the more frustrating days we've had in a while.
Absolutely.
And it's a pattern for Fulham. This is why we're not going to get Europe this season, because we're inconsistent. But I think we have to make peace with that as a fan base. I'll be honest. I'll have more to say about that later, but
sure,
the squad isn't there, and we're just a team that can't consistently string together good results. And we just don't have it. We don't have it on certain days. And I think we can talk tactics, we can talk mentality, but
sure.
I mean, come on, we have to be honest that this team is not good enough for Europe.
Okay, so we'll get through all of that. I think mentality is a topic that you and me, Tony, we talked about. I think that's a factor. Tactics, I think, are a factor. The players, it's all a factor. Tony, you were there. I want to get your opening thoughts.
Yeah, hi, Max. Hi, for us. Great to see you guys. Yeah, look, it was a very, very disappointing performance on the back of a great result against Forest. You think, like Max says, you think you'll grow and, find that bit of consistency, kick on. What a game to have after such a great result against Forest, to play Palace at home, who we dominated at Selhurst Park earlier in the season. And then in true Fulham fashion, we don't show up. We don't show up. And I'd go as far, Max, to say that's probably our worst performance of the season, if I'm being brutally honest. I thought we were dire from back to front for the whole 90 minutes. There was no tempo. The work ethic was poor. Players were lazy. Players looked off it. Players looked leggy. And it was just, and to, I give credit to Palace. Their league position does not show the side that they've got. They're actually a better side than their league position shows. And they had 3 or 4 players on that pitch yesterday that were head and shoulders above anyone in a Fulham shirt. Head and shoulders. And ultimately, we didn't compete well enough. And as Max rightly says, the thing is that little carrot is dangling. Everyone thinks we're going to make Europe. We're going to make Europe. We're not going to make Europe. We are toothless up front. I keep saying it. We didn't have a shot on goal yesterday, Russ. In 98 minutes, we did not test Henderson. In 98 minutes, he did not touch the ball. That's how bad a performance it was. And we all know where the issues lie. We all know the deficiencies that we have. And it's up to the club and Silva to address those issues in the summer if they've got any aspirations of wanting to push on. Otherwise, we are going to be what we are and what you're seeing, which is what we're getting now, week in, week out.
Okay. Very strong statements from the two of you. So let's get to talking about this match. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. We used to do this. I'm going to do it again in this show. We'll still go through the good, the bad, and who won the coaching battle. I don't know how much good we can take out of this, but we'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to go back to Cottage Talk talking points. So let's start here. And Tony, I'll go back to you, and then Max, I'll go to you afterwards. Here's my first talking point. Crystal Palace forced their style of play on Fulham. They knew how to play against Fulham. It was very different. Same formation that Fulham destroyed Nottingham Forest, same formation. It was the way that they approached it. They attacked Fulham in packs. Whenever Fulham got the ball in certain situations, they were pressing, Tony. They forced their will, is the best way to talk about this. I want to get your thoughts on how they approached this and why Fulham could not respond to them forcing their style because they dictated the play.
Glasner set them up with intent, Russ. That was the difference. And their lively play. Look, they had Hughes and Lerma and Eze with a three in the middle. They dominated Fulham in possession. They won the turnover. They were more physical. And Lukic and Berger and Smith Rowe could not get on top of the game. I thought Lukic and Berger was probably their worst performances yesterday in a Fulham shirt. Both of them were well off it. Berger then obviously had to be careful because he got booked early and there was on a yellow. So he couldn't be making any more, silly tackles and bad fouls. And to be honest, Russ, they defended. I mean, those three centre-halves yesterday will not have an easier game all season. Honestly, not an easier game all season. And it was easy for them. And Eze ran the show. The bottom line is Eze played the way that we want Smith Rowe to play. He got involved, he got on the ball, and he made things happen, and he dominated. Smith Rowe was nowhere to be seen yesterday again. Okay. And it's something that needs to be addressed, Russ, and it needs to be dealt with because if obviously he got injured yesterday, so we don't know how long that's going to be. But his level of performance has to start improving. It really does. Otherwise, it's a waste of space in that position.
Okay. I want to mention this to you, Tony. Like I said, you were there, and then I want to get Max's thoughts on the style of play in here and how Crystal Palace just forced their will on from Tony Gale, who I think we'll all have a lot of respect for Tony Gale. This is the word he used, and I heard this a few times. I'm sure you heard this, Max. Compact. They were very compact. And that's the best way to describe how they approached this. And this is not what we saw against Nottingham Forest. They were kind of all over the place, and we ran the show. In this case, Tony, they were very compact and disciplined and just took it to us.
Yeah, disciplined in their shape. They allowed Fulham to have the ball in front of them, and then it was Fulham pretty much most of the time that were forced into those errors that ended up giving the ball away cheaply, losing in possessions. But also the other thing that Palace had yesterday that we didn't, and this is crucial to their result, is they had an out. Matete was a constant threat throughout the game. His pace, his physicality, his running off the ball, and we just don't have that pace up front. And unfortunately, against a team like Palace, who've got pace at the back as well. I mean, Lecroux looked like a 50 million pound centre half. He was outstanding yesterday. And we couldn't lay a glove on them in those areas. In the final third, we were hopeless. Yeah. And unfortunately, if you don't set yourself up right and not good in those areas, you don't give yourself any opportunity to win the game. And the fact of the matter is that tells you we did not get a shot on goal, not one shot, not one.
Nope.
So that tells you credit to Palace for how they set up and how they pressed us and how they stopped us getting into those areas.
No, totally agree with you on that. Max, your thoughts on the style of play here?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people are comparing it to the Forest match, but that's an insult to Crystal Palace because Forest couldn't play this formation. I think Forest is actually going to be shown to be a fraud, and we're seeing they're getting thrashed by Newcastle now. I think we shouldn't count them as a rival for Europe. They're going to be maybe 10th or 9th at the end of the season. It's a fluke. But what Palace does, Glasner has a formation, and he has a system. We played Palace. I think that was like their second game playing that this season, or they'd recently switched to that after getting thrashed, I think by Bournemouth, right? So Forest came new to this formation. Palace tried and tested, and they knew how to play against us. And I think, Russ, you brought this up earlier that Marco didn't adapt.
No.
So I think we can definitely give him some blame here because we know exactly what Palace were going to do. They were solid. They swarmed, like Tony said, and they had an outlet. And we just were totally feeble. That's the one word that comes to mind. It was feeble. At no point did any player in the pitch, a leader. I mean, who's our captain? Anthony Robinson. We didn't have a leader. I mean, I don't think he should be captain.
That's a good point,
Anthony,
too.
But he's not a leader. He doesn't inspire people. No one said to this Fulham team, come on, we're at home. We think we can qualify for something important in this season. Where's the energy? And we didn't see it. And that's what's actually most concerning for me is that we didn't turn up for a single spell. There was maybe a 5-minute spell after Willian came on when we had some pressure. But again, no shots on target in a home match in the Premier League.
No.
I mean, that's something Scott Parker would love.
I told Tony, I go back all the way to a game against West Ham where Fulham had no shots on target under Martin Jol. That's, I think, one of the last times I remember no shots on target. I'm sure that there have been others, but that's the one that stood out for me. That's embarrassing. I'm glad that Tony brought that up. I was going to bring that up as well. Let's move on and let's talk about it in this term, guys. I'm calling it do business as business is being done. Tony, you and I have talked about this. We are now going to talk about the ref who was horrible, and I'm going to say horrible. He's not the reason why Fulham lost the match, but I'm going to bring it up in these terms, and that's the reason why I'm approaching it this way. The ref was playing in a certain way, and Fulham did not adapt to the fact that he was letting stuff go, and it kept happening and happening. And what ends up happening when these situations are coming up, the players are getting upset. Marco is getting really upset. Instead of concentrating on the opponent, they're letting their emotions make things worse, Tony. That's why I'm saying the ref is bad here, and we should be talking about that. But the reaction from Marco and the players made it worse. That's why I'm saying when you see how the match is being played, you got to just deal with it and get on with business. This is how it's being played. They didn't do that. They let the ref get in their heads.
Yeah, look, it's very easy to point the finger at Robert Jones and blame him, and he, he's the reason why Fulham didn't get a foothold in the game, and they got frustrated, and they, as you say, Russ, they allowed the ref to get into their heads.
Yes.
And look, to be honest with you, his performance yesterday was substandard. It was diabolical, and actually, he should be relegated to the Championship. That's how bad it was. But I'm not blaming the referee for Fulham's defeat, Russ. Listen, it didn't help because some of his decisions were baffling. They honestly were baffling. But ultimately, look, Max touched on it, and I think it's a very poignant point. There's no leaders in this team. We are mentally weak. There are no winners. When things are going against us, Max is absolutely right. Who is pulling this team by the scruff of the neck and going, right, lads, come on. Someone put in a dirty challenge. Someone smash someone. Someone get people riled up and get them going. Didn't see any of that yesterday. Nothing. No. Every time Leno got the ball, Russ, he put his foot on the ball. He slowed the tempo right down. He passed it to Anderson or Bassi. They were then walking out with it. It was all too laboured. It was all too slow. There was no tempo. There was nothing. Not like we watched the week before against Forest, where we were popping the ball around all over the place. Yep. Now, maybe, as I said, that was a lot to do with Palace and the way they were set up. But you've still got to have intent. You've still got to play with some tempo. And that was what was lacking yesterday, massively, all over the pitch.
Totally agree, Tony. And to your point of talking about tempo, right? They're basically slowing things down between the two center backs and, of course, Leno, too. And then they would pick their spots. I'm calling out Crystal Palace. What they would do is they waited for a certain point, and then they would start attacking. You would see it from Mateta. Then you would see it from on the wings. You would see it from their central midfielders. They knew exactly how to play against Fulham. They did. Their game plan was spot on. They knew how to attack Fulham, and it worked really well. But the mentality, going back to Max, is that you have to have a positive mentality. You need a leader out there. And to both of your points, I don't know who it is, Max. I don't know if they have one.
No, I mean, and that's the issue. Tony says, right? It's like when things are going great, we can post all the happy pictures and everyone's getting along. But actually, when we actually need it, when we actually need someone to show some energy or response, it wasn't there. Yep. I mean, Anderson had a shocker. And, I have some Palace mates and they're giving me all sorts of stick for saying, we got Lacroix and you guys got stuck with Anderson, and look who won the day. I mean, Anderson was totally rattled and he scored an own goal. But, as Tony Gale said in the comms, is because he was too worried about the refereeing decision and he let Mateta get in his head. And
that's the problem.
That's kind of pathetic. Center midfielders look slow. I mean, how can they inspire energy when they look like they're playing at half speed versus the Palace players? Will Hughes, right? Will Hughes bossed us. I don't want to disrespect Will Hughes because he's a great footballer and he's extremely underrated. But I mean, come on, and this is not someone who should be playing us off the pitch. So we have to look at ourselves. I think we have to look at the manager after halftime. It's 1-0 at halftime. Okay, it wasn't a great first half. We've bounced back before against Brentford, against Chelsea, but there was no response. If anything, got worse. Right? If anything, second half performance, and that's hard to imagine. I mean, we can say it's a one-off. We can say don't overreact too much to this match, but we sense something. We beat Newcastle away. We beat Forest at home. Those are two teams above us in the league. And then comes Palace. And this is a killer of this Fulham team. Everyone says it. We just can't beat the sides below us or the sides that we quote unquote should beat. And of course it's a Premier League, so there's no guarantees. But this is why I think fans are just really frustrated. Even though, by comparison, this might have been our points wise, this is our best season maybe ever since the Hodgson days, right?
Right.
So it's a weird feeling to be so frustrated when we're actually, by all accounts, performing quite well.
Right, Max. But this goes to what you just said. For me, it's not that Fulham is strictly, it's about their poor home form, or it's not just that. What it is that they cannot beat teams that are set up to stop them from playing. That to me is what it ultimately comes down to. At Craven Cottage, especially on the size of the pitch, you got a team like this that knows how to stop you, and you don't know how to react to it. And that to me is what we see over and over again. It is the teams below us that tend to play this style. And oh, by the way, the next two matches, we're going to see it again and again. So Marco is going to have to figure this out, because you're going to see it against Wolves. They play three at the back. Then guess what? This huge FA Cup match, Manchester United play it too. So you're going to deal with it again. It might be a little bit differently, these two matches, because it's not home matches for Fulham, but we shall see. But it's something that has bothered me. It's why does this keep happening? Why are they losing against teams below them? And I think part of it is that teams try to stop Fulham from playing. When they play on the counter, when Fulham play on the counter, that's when they're at their best. When they have to beat a team, except for whatever reason, Nottingham Forest, they struggle, guys. Tony, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's become a proper psychological issue for the players, and look, it's something that Silva needs to address. And the problem is, and I wanted to come back to Max's point about him having a plan B. The problem is he doesn't have a plan B. That's the problem. He's got one way of playing, and that's it. And yeah, he's tried this three at the back, stuff which he implemented towards the last 10 minutes yesterday, but it was too little, too late. And the problem is that players are now starting to look leggy. That's one of the other issues we've got. Iwobi looks like he's had 70 games this season and he's on his last legs. I mean, he's starting to be ineffectual now. He was ineffectual yesterday. He's starting to look leggy. Even Robinson starting to look a little bit jaded. And I saw it yesterday in certain players that the sharpness just isn't there. And ultimately, we I don't know what's going to happen this week, but it's a very big week for Fulham, because obviously they've got to go to Wolves Tuesday night. They're on the back of a great result yesterday, and that's not going to be any easier. And then our season rests on next Sunday, Russ. It's as simple as that. It rests on next Sunday, and Silva has to get a tune out of this group of players now. Otherwise, season's over. We don't get a result next week. It pitters out into nothingness, absolute nothingness.
Okay, good stuff from the two of you. You guys already took me to where I wanted to go, and that was to talk about Marco Silva. And I've now watched this back, believe it or not, and I told you guys before we started the show, I've watched it twice now. So I got to see things. And one of the things that I noticed was that Fulham obviously set up the way that they did against Nottingham Forest, against a similar formation. It's really the same formation, but it's a different approach. This time, I'll give Crystal Palace all the credit here, is that they set up to stop Fulham from playing. So I'm going to ask both of you. Tony, I'll start with you because you were there. Why didn't Marco change this sooner? In my opinion, 20 to 25 minutes into this, you could see that what they were doing wasn't working that well. Should he have changed it earlier, halftime? not in the 80th minute or whenever he made the change formation, but not just that. Maybe he could have tweaked something in central midfield. That was my thoughts. So I want to get your thoughts. Why do you think he just stuck with what was going on? And was that a factor in what we watched?
Only Marco Silva will be able to answer that, Russ, right? But I can tell you this now. At half time, I would have made 5 changes at half time. That's how poor that first half was, right? And all right, he brings on Pereira and Kearney on 58 minutes. He takes Berger off because he's on a yellow. And obviously Smith Rowe has to come off because he's injured. Those two were the catalysts for the second goal that we conceded. Both of them, Pereira and Kearney, right? Should have made tackles, both of them half-hearted. The guy runs straight through the middle of us like it was, cutting a knife through butter. When Muniz scores his second goal on the 66th minute, that's when he should have changed the shape. He should have changed the whole thing, gone 2 up front, and at least given Fulham, 25 minutes to get back into the game and do something. His changes on 80 minutes made absolutely no sense to me at 2-0 down. The game was already gone. It was over.
It was over then.
Absolutely pointless bringing on Diop, going to 3 at the back. Then what are they going to do in 10 minutes?
That's a good point. I want to get your thoughts on this. Max, if you're Marco Silva, would you have made changes sooner? I know I would have.
Yeah, certainly. I would have made, I can't believe I'm saying this, I would have made a change from the starting 11. I wouldn't have started Emil Smith-Rowe. I know it's tough to say because he scored against Forest and had some good moments, but I'm getting sick of talking about Emil Smith-Rowe, guys. I just am. I don't know how long we're supposed to wait. I have a lot of patience for players. I've said this before. I wrote off Lukic early on. I'm trying to be better.
Okay.
God, this guy does nothing on the football pitch sometimes. Like nothing. And that's what really annoys fans is that he just doesn't seem to be up for it. I mean, Pereira, listen, Pereira hasn't had a good season either. So I don't love Pereira, but I would be at least willing to start him in a match coming up, certainly at Wolves midweek, just to send some kind of message to Smith-Rowe. Because, again, I think Tony hit a nail on the head. Ebericha Eze was bossing this. Will Hughes bossing this. That's what the player you want in the center of the park.
That's
Someone
right.
who's bright, can attack space. I mean, first of all, Eze had some amazing dribbles. Like this guy doesn't deserve to be playing at Palace. No disrespect to Palace. I mean, he's a Champions League, Europa League player. He really is. Smith-Rowe, who came from a very vaunted academy and played for Arsenal in big matches before. I mean, what is he doing? Like, where's his acceleration? He has some dribbling ability. I recognize that, but it's really minimal. And I think yesterday was a really stark example of how, wow, imagine we had a proper center midfielder, right? Someone who could actually inject dynamism into a game. Instead, we have someone who just kind of walks about and is supposed to, but we just kept being told, oh, this guy's something special. Oh, just wait until he's fully fit. Oh, just wait. It's the 23rd of February. I don't know how long we're supposed to wait for.
Okay. I want to go to Tony because you and I have talked about Eze and the difference between him and Smith-Rowe. We want Smith-Rowe to be more like Eze. Is that fair, Tony?
100%, Russ. Absolutely. And he should be. He should want to be. But Max is right. I mean, look, I've been a big advocate of Smith-Rowe. I've always said that patience is key. But I'm getting like Max. I agree. I'm running out of time and patience. He flitters in and he flitters out. Yesterday, he absolutely, Max is right, offered nothing. He got on the ball. He seems to be lacking a yard of pace. But when you see Eze get on the ball, he made things happen. He was bright. He was lively. Every ball he played was a threat. And we had to be on our toes. Our defense had to be alive. And the difference yesterday is we didn't have that. We just didn't have that. And then Pereira comes on and you're thinking, okay, now's his chance to, grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And then he puts in a lazy, shocking challenge in midfield that just lets the guy walk straight past him. And you're thinking, what is going on here?
That was like the Ipswich Town match again. Remember that?
It was awful. Russ, that second goal was shocking.
Oh, it's bad. I know.
And we keep on giving up these poor goals week in, week out. And it's something that hasn't been addressed. And as I said, for Smith-Rowe now, Obviously, depending on how bad he's in, I don't think he starts against Wolves. I think Max is right. I think Pereira will come in against Wolves. He needs to change something.
Okay, very good. All right, guys, let's go to my section I call the good, the bad, and who won the coaching battle. I will just start here and end here with the good. The match ended. That's the good part. Okay. I don't think there's anything else that we can add, right? So let's go right to the bad. We've already talked about Emil Smith-Rowe. So I think that's in the bad category. Max, I'll give you next shot at the bad. Who do you want to put in the bad, or anything else you want to put in the bad?
Oh, good question. Where do I start?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that the second goal.
Okay.
Has
Tony
to
was
be
already
bad.
talking about.
I know. Just to put a finer point on that, I've never seen two more pathetic attempts at a tackle than Kearney and Pereira on Mateta. Like, that really reminded me of the way we played in like the 2019 relegation season, the 2021 like that's a type of defense we were used to. Just players failing to put in simple things like tackles. And the way Munoz just fainted Bassi. I mean, that was schoolboy defending. Like, I remember saying stuff like that when Ranieri was manager and we were losing like 4-0 to United. And that's exactly what I remember. Those kind of goals. So that was really depressing to see.
Okay. Over to you, Tony. What do you want to put in the bad category?
You
can go in plenty of
nail
places.
on the head. That second goal was absolutely shambolic. From as he says, Pereira through to Kearney through to Bassett. It was just a horrible, horrible, horrible goal. So that's definitely in the bad category. The other bad, the referee's performance was bad, absolutely horrendous. But also, Russ, I want to talk about our shape.
Sure.
When the centre halves got the ball, that was also bad because Anderson, genuinely, we've been mugged off. I mean, Palace are laughing all the way to the bank, honestly. And he deserved every little bit of stick he got yesterday because he's a fraud. The guy's a fraud. He's got one out ball. Yesterday, he was knocking 40-yard balls into no man's land, giving the ball away. So that for me, if you can't play out through the back and you're not going to play in through the channels and transitions and you're just going to constantly give the ball away, you've got no chance of getting a foothold in the game. And that's what we did yesterday. Time and time and time again. And it just wasn't good enough. It was just awful.
Okay. You said to me that you would put Jimenez as being poor. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I just felt yesterday he just had like the whole team really. I just thought his movement wasn't there. There were times when he had the opportunity to run the channels and he just didn't. And then there was one opportunity when actually he got through, but he had no pace. And so the covering defender got round, made the tackle. But really, if you've got a centre forward a bit of pace in that position, you're scoring that chance. That chance is in the back of the net. I think if Muniz would have been on at that point, he would have taken that. But he's just all-round performance was lacking yesterday. And I think he's been excellent for us. So I don't want to be too critical. But, I mean, just generally, yesterday, it just wasn't there. And we had no out. And as I said, we didn't register a shot on goal. So that tells you how poor his performance was.
Okay. I'm going to share this comment from Steve Reynolds and just add something to the bad category. The bad is Marco, not calming down players down when needed and total lack of a plan B. We're going to talk about who won the coaching battle. I think it's pretty obvious there in just a second. But I'm going to put in the bad category the mentality dealing with the ref. We've already talked about this, Max, because I think when the whole thing happened I was going to start with Smith-Rowe. That's when this all started to begin. Then you have the other challenges, and there were about 3 or 4 of them. And Marco kept going at the 4th official. The players see that. And for me, that just led to a very bad mentality for the rest of the half because the players are seeing what's going on and they now have, we're just going to blame the ref. Instead of concentrating on the game, they've got the ref in their head, Max. So I'm putting that in the bad category.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly, is that they let themselves get rattled and you can't control the ref. You have to focus on the pitch, and it became this kind of listen. He made a terrible call. The Smith-Rowe foul was a clear foul, And then you can even argue that Bassi was fouled in the lead up to their goal.
He should have been. Yes.
Now I'm a little bit torn on that because I think modern football sometimes is too overly policed and they don't let things go that they used to. And I do see they got Will Heason got the ball and then took out Bassi. So I don't want to call that a foul, but the way the modern game is refereed, that should be a foul. So,
Okay.
but I mean, they let these incidents get in their head clearly. And instead of marking up, Anderson his mind was elsewhere and he lets up an own goal.
Absolutely.
And it's against the center back, which replaced him at Palace. And I think all of that was just too much for Anderson. It was just all wrapped into the drama of the afternoon. And he never got over it.
Totally agree, Max. All right. Let's now go to the coaching battle. I think we all know where this is going. And I think Marco got outcoached big time to Glasner. You want to give him a lot of credit because he set his team up and his team executed exactly what they needed to do to stop Fulham from playing. And as Tony said, they had the man up front that they could just get the ball to, and then he's going to do something with it and cause all kinds of havoc. And then, of course, you also have Eze. Fulham didn't have either one of those threats up front. They did not have those types of threats. So I'm going to give it big time to Glasner. Tony, I want to get your thoughts about the coaching battle.
Crystal Palace had 38% of possession yesterday, Russ, as opposed to Fulham's 62% over the 90 minutes, right? But at the end of the day, what wins you football matches is putting the ball in the back of the net. And Palace did that twice, and we didn't even look like laying a glove on them. So for me, Glasner's won it hands down because the bottom line is that Silva's becoming all too predictable now.
Yeah.
All too predictable because what he does is when things aren't going well, or he needs to change it, it's like for like. It's just like for like. He's not doing it today. So maybe, get Pereira on because Smith Rowe's not doing it. Or Berger's not doing it today. So let's get Kearney on. Or Anderson's not doing it today. So let's throw Diop in there. And Raul's run his race. So let's put Muniz up there. Where's the change in formation? Where's the tactical changes? Where's changing the shape? Where's making things a little bit more difficult for the opposition? It never happens. It's just like for like. And then when he does make the tactical decisions or the changes, it's too late.
Yeah.
And so, listen, Glasner has done an unbelievable job. He's been given time. As you said, he's working. You can see that they're working at training and what they're working on, the shape in possession, shape out of possession. Every player knows their job and their role within that. And yesterday, he did a number on Fulham. It's as simple as that. Complete number.
Okay. Max, I have a feeling you're going to be in agreement on that.
Yeah, I have nothing to add on this one. Except that Marco, he's still the reason we're in the position we're in. I don't want to lose sight of that.
Of course he is.
He took us from the championship to a solid Premier League team in a way no manager has done in recent memory. We were a yo-yo club before Marco came here. So I just want to add that context that we owe so much to him. And when it was the summer, when it looked like he was going to leave Mitro, thank God he stayed, because if we had lost Marco, I think it's a very different club. Thank God he can go to Saudi. 2 years in a row, he was given big money. So I respect him, but he does have shortcomings. And I think Tony accurately subbed him up. I think the in-game management sometimes isn't great. But let's also remember, haven't we scored one of the most goals from subs in the entire league with Muniz and Harry Wilson? I think we also have to recognize that yes, he might be too slow to change things up. But when he does, he often gets a lot of impact out of them. So it's not as cut and dry, I think, sometimes as we like to believe. But certainly with yesterday, still fresh in the mind.
Right.
We are entitled to ask for more from Marco.
Listen, I think Marco's a genius, and I'll say that, but he's not infallible, and I think it's fair to criticize him when he deserves it. And I'm going to criticize him here because he is unwilling to change when things need to be changed. They needed to be changes. At the latest, as Tony said, halftime. It's not working. Change it at halftime. Why do we have to wait until the 80th minute to make a significant change? Why is he so afraid to change formation? Why? Because he believes in his system and his players believe in his system. And I think the do what they do coaches get found out, and Marco got found out against Glasner, and you need to change it. And he was unwilling to, and that's what frustrates me about him. Fantastic coach, great game plans. Like you said, he'll make the right substitutions many times, but they'll just be like for like. How about changing things up when things are wrong? And they were wrong, guys, yesterday. Wrong, but he refused to. And I'm very upset. And I'm putting a good amount of the blame on this loss on him. I'm putting it obviously on the players as well. But his stubbornness is a major problem for me. He's way too stubborn at times. And I think it showed itself in this match. As you can see, I'm getting angry, and I don't mean to, but I'm frustrated.
But what change would you have made? Well, I'm just curious because I think Chris makes a good point in the comments in that, I mean, the squad isn't quite there.
Okay.
What exactly would you have changed?
He could have tweaked the midfield a little bit because it was obvious at one point when Berga is your holding midfielder that they were taking Lukic out of the game. Maybe he moves Lukic farther back as real like a 2. He could have done something to change things up in that middle. And I think that was something that I think was a problem because one of the good things about that Nottingham Forest match is that you saw Lukic be very impactful. They took him out of the match with Gahey. Gahey took him out of the match. Go back and watch. So there are things I think he could have done in game. I want to get your thoughts on this, Tony. I know it's blasphemous to basically take a shot at Marco, but I think it's warranted here.
No, look, I think Max makes a very good. I think everything in context. Look, no one's criticizing Silva. We're talking about him in one game situation.
Right.
Silva is a good manager, right? We are lucky to have him. He's a good manager, but I want him to be a great manager, Russ. And I think that's what the supporters want. And for him to become a great manager, he has to improve in certain areas of his own game management. And one area that he needs to improve on is defensively. I think he falls short massively defensively. We've kept 4 clean sheets in 23 games this season. That's not good enough. That's just not good enough. And that's an area that he needs to improve on. Now, whether that's because he hasn't got good enough players at the moment, whether that's because collectively it's just not happening. But, the reason why I believe none of the top 6 or top European teams will take a punt on him is because they see something that he lacks in those areas. I would have changed the shape and formation yesterday. It was clear that Adama Traore and Iwobi were getting no joy out wide.
That's
so
right.
I'll tell you what, why don't we utilise Adama's pace and just put him through the middle and change it up a little bit? And, he's a professional footballer playing at the highest level. Whether he plays on the left or the right or down the middle, he's still a Premier League footballer and should be able to do all 3, to be perfectly honest. So utilise his pace. It's not working out wide. Let's try him up front. Let's play him through the middle, off Raul or Muniz if he comes on.
Right.
Let's change it up a bit. But I don't know. We just seem to be stuck, and players just seem to be stuck in certain positions that's all they can do and that's all they can offer you. Get William on, change it up, put Adame through the middle. I'd love to see him play through the middle. I really would.
Okay. And listen, Max, to my point on what would I do, and I'm glad that Tony brought this up. Again, there are things I think in game he could have done, at least at halftime. But to wait until the 80th minute, that to me, listen, you watch this. Are you telling me that they were going to even get a shot on target the way they were playing?
No.
So when you have that and you're watching it, right? And that's why I was actually upset by how much he was concentrating on the fourth official having an argument with him instead of thinking, maybe I should change things up. That's what frustrated me, Max.
Yeah, no, I think you have every right to be. I was asking like genuinely because I think it's limited what we can do with the team. I do recognize there are things that can be changed, but I mean, think of the injury list right now, right?
Yep.
Tete.
Do we miss Tete?
Wilson.
Do we miss
Tete? 100%. Castagna, he's a good footballer, but Tete's much better. I think we can see now. He makes the team so much more dynamic as well. And I don't think Castagna is good going forward. I think he gets in a lot of okay positions, but then doesn't have the crossing. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're an injured team. We're a thin squad, and you want to talk about investment. I mean, we really could have brought in a top class attacker to replace all our injured wingers, and we did Willian, who I like, but I mean that it was kind of almost like a joke signing. Oh, we're out of ideas, lads. Let's bring back Willian. Where is he now? Oh, great! He just canceled his contract in Greece. Perfect.
Okay, Steve Reynolds actually has a good point. I'm going to share this. Stevie Wonder had more chance of scoring yesterday, so that's a good one there. Okay, so real quick, guys, before we talk about both halves, which I don't think we need to spend too much time on because it was that bad. But thoughts on the starting 11? Tony, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think after the Forest performance, I think it was he had to go with the same team. I don't think he could have made any unless there was an injury or someone was struggling, and that's why I'm a little bit baffled because I can't understand how from 1 week we can play with such tempo, such tenacity, such urgency, to then with the same set of players go and perform so abjectly. I just don't understand it, and that is a mentality issue. Credit to Palace, yes, to a certain degree, but that is just weak player mentality, Russ. So the starting 11, I don't have an issue with it. They just didn't perform. They just did not turn up.
I didn't have a problem with it. Max, you mentioned earlier that maybe you would have started Pereira instead of Smith Rowe.
Yeah, I mean, but it's hard to actually make that call given how well we played against Forest. I don't think Marco could make any changes, to be honest. He just couldn't because we were that good and that dominant against a team who was third in the league. So it would have been a big call to make to bench anyone. So I understand why he started this 11.
Okay, excellent. All right. Coming up next, we're going to talk about both halves of football, which is not going to be fun to talk about because it was ugly, but we're going to do it coming up next. All right, guys, let's get to it. Tony, I'll go to you first because I'm sure you got a good view of this when we talk about what I'm going to focus on in the first half. But I guess you could say the match started okay for Fulham, but I could just tell early on that Crystal Palace were going to challenge everything Fulham did. But early stages, I kept thinking maybe, just maybe, they would be able to create. But it was evident even early on that it was going to be difficult based on how Palace were going to play. But I want to focus on the challenge on Smith Rowe because I actually think this is a turning point in the match because this is when I think Marco starts to lose his head and maybe the players start to get a little bit angry. But the challenge itself, for me, this is where I have all kinds of issues with the ref. This is bad, Tony. I've watched it back. And even Tony Gale, when they slowed it down and you see it, they believe that they thought that Rob Jones thought he dived. He didn't dive. He totally did not dive. And in fact, I think this is a very bad challenge from a fellow American, Max Richards. This is actually not good on Smith Rowe. It was Richards who did this. So, Tony, I want to get your thoughts on the challenge of Smith Rowe and how actually this affected Fulham.
Right. If Rob Jones thinks that's a dive, that just about sums up his performance yesterday in every aspect of the game. But look, it was a poor challenge. He's obviously done Smith Rowe. And look, Smith Rowe was down for a good few minutes, right? Let me tell you, I was watching very closely. Silva was in his notebook talking to his right-hand man or whatever it was for a good 5 minutes. None of the subs got called back. They took Smith Rowe off, right? Then threw him back on. It was clear to see there's no way he can continue. He was done, right? They've put him back on. And 2 minutes later, he's on the floor. Palace go and break. All right, thankfully the goal got disallowed. But what decisions are going on the sidelines? What the hell is going on? It was absolute pandemonium, craziness. And look, Smith Rowe wasn't playing particularly well at that point anyway. So whether he stayed on or went off, it made no difference ultimately. Okay. But look, it was a bad challenge and the referees missed one. How he can book Berger for a challenge earlier and not book Richards for that is mind-blowing.
Okay. All right. Max, I'm going to give you not the courtesy, and I feel bad I'm giving this to you. We got to talk about the opening goal by Crystal Palace. So give me your thoughts on this. And again, this is an unfortunate, and I think a goal that is preventable. Your thoughts?
Just poor marking. I mean, Anderson doesn't really know where the ball is. It hits off his face and goes in. It's just as simple as that. This should be his bread and butter. I do like Anderson. I'm not as critical as some about him, but he's not having a great run of matches. I mean, I was there at the Bournemouth match, and God, he looked really off the pace, just not tracking strikers, just seeming, and then the passing range, as Tony was mentioning, what theoretically should be one of his biggest assets, which was his biggest asset when he was playing with us back in 2020, 2021, just seems to have really gone down. And the marking here, again, his last-ditch headers, his last-ditch defensive plays, that was, again, one of the best parts when he was in his first spell with us on loan. And it just seems slower. I don't know. I don't really have a great analysis for it. He got injured early in the season, had that calf problem. That was 2 to 3, 4 months ago. Theoretically, that shouldn't be bothering him. So it's a big question mark. Obviously, he's not in danger of being dropped, I don't think, unless Diop is really knocking on the door. But yeah, just that was really bad marking.
Okay. Tony, back over to you. I just want to get your overall thoughts on the first half. After that, obviously, Fulham created nothing, really. I mean, when we don't talk about a shot on target, what can you really say? Were there moments where they were on the front foot? Maybe a few, but overall, that was just a poor half of football, and I got a message from you that basically said that.
It was a woeful half of football. The goal that we conceded was woeful. Like Max has said, your big centre half. To me, it looked like he turned his back. I know someone in the comments put he was shoved, but it just looked like he turned his back, and the ball's hit him on the back of the head and gone in. It was just, again, I've said it all season, Russ. We concede such soft goals, and that's been our Achilles heel this season.
Yeah,
far too many times we've conceded soft goals, and that's why we're in 9th, 10th position and not 7th, 6th, 5th, because we give away poor goals. And there's nothing else to talk about in the first half. It was woeful. Our passing was off. Our distribution was off from deep areas. There was people stopped running. Traore and Iwobi couldn't get any 1v1s, and when they did, they turned back out and went backwards. It was just too laboured. Everything far too laboured. And I really thought that Silva was going to get into them at half time and give them the hairdryer treatment. I really did, because that's what they needed.
Okay, and that's going to lead to now talk about the second half. No substitutions going into the second half, Tony, and then I'll go over to Max. What did you make of what you saw before the second goal, which put the match away? Did you see any improvement coming out of the second half?
No, none. And the writing was on the wall. The warning signs were there when Matete scored the second goal that was disallowed, right? The warning signs were there. And it was like, come on, Silva. You've now had you've been let off. You've got to let off. Sort it out, change it. That's when he should have made the changes, right? That's when he should have made the change to the shape, to the formation, to everything. And gone, you know what? We're 1-0 down. We've just had a let off. I'm going to change it all. But he didn't. And he was forced into one change because he then brought on Pereira for the injured Smith Rowe. Right. And then I think he took Berger off because he was on a yellow, and he brought on Kearney.
And that didn't work.
No, it didn't, because 10 minutes later, those two were catastrophic in the second goal. Absolutely catastrophic.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that now. I feel bad, Max. I'm giving you the opportunity to talk about both these terrible goals. The second one, I think, is even worse. And what's interesting about this one is that Smith Rowe is injured at this point, but they keep going. But as I said to someone, the one thing that stands out for me, and Tony's already talked about this, it happened in the Ipswich Town match, and it happened again in this match. You have Pereira basically throwing his arm out to try to grab the player, and the player just goes by him, and that sets this whole thing off. Give me your thoughts on the second goal.
Yeah, it is a strong striker play by Mateta. Like, not quite like Mitro, but you remind us what we're missing. Someone who's so physical and strong, yet such delicate touches. I mean, the way we started this counterattack was really great skill. And then the perfect pass into Munoz, who when he receives the ball, definitely has a lot of space, but I wasn't necessarily concerned that the wingback was going to score. And then he squares up Bassi. Bassi stands there, gets fooled so easily. And then Munoz, all he does is fake shot and then touch down the line. It's not anything crazy. Leno beaten a bit too easily, you could say. It's a great strike. It's hit with real pace right above his head, but it's not really in the corner. And I think Leno might be disappointed he didn't react quicker, but it was a lovely counterattacking goal. It was coming. The VAR decision, actually, I want to talk about that briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
We got lucky.
We did.
Anthony Robinson was 4 yards behind the line, and it looked really close, but that's really bad defending. Because if he's where Anderson and Bassi are, the offside isn't even close. But again, he's kind of caught out there. And I thought that was something which is not being talked about enough because obviously the goal was disallowed, but got very fortunate with some pretty bad positioning.
Okay. Very good there. Max, okay. Back over to you, Tony, to end this episode talking about this match, which I actually just want to end it because it's just terrible to talk about. Just give me your overall thoughts on how Fulham ended the match.
It was a bad day at the office, Russ. And let me tell you this, it's not going to be the last bad day at the office this season, right? That's Fulham. This is the Fulham that we are this season. We are what they call inconsistent, and that's what we've just got to get used to. And, there's no point turning up thinking Fulham are going to put in an absolutely brilliant performance and we're going to get through. You just got to turn up and see what unfolds in front of you because you just don't know what Fulham is going to turn up. And that is the bottom line. And until we change that, until Silva finds a way to deal with that, and is that the answer? We've got to have a stronger depth of squad, better players, absolutely 100%. But that can't be dealt with now until the summer. So we've just got to now ride out the season. Silva has got to put all his eggs in the basket next Sunday. He's got to go to United with his strongest 11, and he's got to go hell-bent to go and win that game. Everything to win that game. And look, Tuesday night is going to be really difficult. I don't think it's going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. But Fulham owe the fans a performance. So the players have got to pull themselves up and deliver. Okay,
very good. All right. Over to you, Max. Let's just go to final thoughts because, again, Tony's kind of already took us there. What do you make of this, and what do you expect in these next two matches?
Yeah, I mean, Tony summed up well. This could be our season. I think the FA Cup has to be the top priority, in my opinion, because I don't think we'll get Europe. And listen, if you win the FA Cup, you get Europa League. And also, does it really matter for us, 10th versus 8th? I mean, 8th could be Conference League, fair. But I would rather, and I know maybe this is a hot take, I would rather rest players for Wednesday and go all in for Old Trafford. Because what this club is dying out for is a trophy.
Right.
It would be amazing to win the FA Cup. We are, of course, been so close last couple of years. Carabao Cup semifinal. What happened to United a couple of years ago in the FA Cup too. We've had a good cup runs. And I think that the way we're playing this season, probably the best in terms of winning one-off matches against good opposition. So, I think I think everyone's focus has to be shifted towards Sunday. But that's tough to say because obviously Wolves in a relegation battle. You can't go into that match, half-hearted. So I feel for Marco. It's not easy to make decisions, but I do think the biggest game of our season is a week from today, and that has to be reflected in the selection.
Okay, very good. All right. I'm going to share my final thoughts, and it's this. I want Fulham to have a response in the next two matches. We're playing against formations that have shown to really give Fulham trouble. The three at the back. They figured it out against Nottingham Forest, but now you have these next two opponents that are probably going to try to stop Fulham from playing. I don't know away if that's going to be any different. We shall see. But we need a response. And as Tony said, we really can't change much until the summer. So you got to go with what you have. But I'm going to put this on Marco to figure this out and put Fulham in the best position to succeed. And the way I'm going to end this is saying this and ask the question to everyone listening or watching the show. did Marco Silva put Fulham in the best position to succeed in this match? Those players. Because I think early on, the setup, it was obvious it wasn't working, and it was screaming for some kind of change. And that's why when you talk about all these bad performances, and we've got to give Crystal Palace a lot of credit, isn't it on the manager to try to change things? And that's just the way I'm going to leave this, because I feel that he had a role in changing this match, and I don't think he really did enough to change it. And I think he's a fantastic manager, but I think that it's fair to question him, and I'm going to question him coming out of this match. And that's how I'm going to end this episode. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Cottage Talk. He's Tony Gold. He's Max Cohen. I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the TalkSport Fan Network.